Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make this rather eccentric but very fun Maypole Dance necklace. So as you'll see, I've got laid out the kind of design that I'm going to use with the beads that I want. That's a good place to start, so get an idea of where you want the beads to sit for this project first. And then I'll also be using 2 pairs of flat nose pliers, a pair of side cutters and a pair of round nose pliers as my tools, as well as the components like eye pins, head pins, jump rings, and also this knot it Chinese knotting cord. So firstly, what I'm going to show you is how to make the charm drops, whether that be with this little charm here or the little butterfly bead. So to start to make up the butterfly drop, we're going to use an eye pin, and you want to hold the eye pin with your thumb supporting the neck part next to the loop, and we're going to use the flat nose pliers to open this. So you just want to take a grip with the flat nose pliers on the side of the loop, and you're just going to twist that open. You then attach your charm, and you'll notice I'm holding it over the side of my finger, that way it doesn't get in the way as I close the loop back together. If I was going to do the butterfly charm, I would be using a head pin. So this has a flat bottom as there's no loop on this one. So I'd place a seed bead underneath, go through the butterfly, and a seed bead on top. The loop we're going to create will be the same for both of these. So we've already attached our little bumblebee charm, and onto the top of the eye pin I'm also going to thread a seed bead, a 4mm glass bead, and then another seed bead above this, like so. In order to make the loop on these, I'm going to use a pair of round nose pliers. So you want to place the pliers directly above the last bead. With a firm grip of my right hand, I'm then going to push the eye pin away from me at a 90-degree angle. So that's creating my first twist. I then want to release the grip of my round nose pliers and move them on top. So I've just changed the position from the pliers facing me to on top without gripping. And then I'm going to bring the eye pin all the way over the top of the pliers and down towards the bead mat. What I've now created is a kind of hook shape. We want to then wrap this excess wire around the stem of the eye pin. So I'm going to place my pliers back into the loop and support the top with the top prong. Holding my hand nice and still again, I'm going to wrap the wire under and then bring that round. At this point I'm going to create 2 twists with the wire, giving us a really nice neat loop and a wrap of wire around the neck of the eye pin. We don't need this anymore, so we're going to use the cutters, and we want the smooth edge to get really nice and tight and take that excess wire away. If you do end up with a tiny lip of wire, you can use your flat nose pliers to ease that in. So we're just going to gently fold that in so we've got no scratchy bits of wire, like so. I want this to have a bit of movement on this Maypole Dance necklace, so I'm going to add a jump ring to the top of this. So I'm going to use 2 pairs of flat nose pliers in order to open my jump ring. So I'm holding one side firmly, the splits at the top, and then I'm going to take the second pair of pliers to the side, and I'm just going to gently open the jump ring. hooking the loop that I created with my eye pin onto the open jump ring I then want to close it the same way I opened it, and that will give us a beautifully sealed jump ring. Complete that with all the drops that you have. So we've got a butterfly here, another bumblebee and another bumblebee. So you'd use up your eye pins and head pins to complete that. And then next, we're going to start the actual threading of the necklace. So you want to cut 3 2-meter lengths of your knotted cord, and then we're going to half these evenly. We're not cutting it because we actually want all 6 strands after. So in order to make our button loop attachment, where it's going to be effectively the fastener, you want to place the halved threads around your finger, and then you're going to create a knot. So you're bringing all 6 strands through the knot. It's a bit of a fiddly one, this, so just bear with it and take your time. So I'm just gently making sure all 6 strands come through. This is why I call it the maypole, because you've got so many strands to deal with. Okay, now we want that knot nice and tight, but also snug, so that we can pop the button bead through at the end. So I just need to tighten that one up a little. And then even out the knots. So we've got a tidy knot at the end, and the button loop will fasten through there. Okay. Now I find it easier if you can use a bulldog clip for the next part. So I'm just going to pop the loop inside. And then I'm going to separate 2 strands, 2 in the middle and 2 to the end. And I'm just going to create about 2 centimeters worth of a plait. So I'm just going to wrap these round and make a nice little plait with the cotton. So I'm coming up to the end, and I reckon that's quite a generous 2 centimeters, but that is what I will go with. So I'm just going to release that from the bulldog clip and move it out of the way. And now what I'm going to do is tie all these strands together again. So loop that over the finger, and then take my threads through. Gently ease that into position. Okay. So we've got our loop, 2 centimeters of our plait, and then we're going to go through our first bead on our design. You may just need to, if the ends have knotted together, run your fingers through that to release the knots. Make it easier for the next bit of stringing. So we have our 6 strands of cord here, and I'm just going to even them to make the threading easier. So all 6 and I'm going to go through my first bead. And that's going to go up to the knot, and I'm going to make another knot either side. And then that part is done, and we're going to move on to our next section of threading as well. Okay, so we've got this positioned, and we're going to add our selection of beads. So this is a bit, you can make your own mind up how you want these laying out. So I'm going to separate 2 strands, and I'm going to put 2 through the metal spacer. So both strands through 1 bead. This is just going to add to the overall effect of this Maypole Dance necklace. So we've got those on there. I'm going to put 1 strand through the lilac bead. One through my turquoise bead. And then the remaining 2 strands I'm going to take through that spotted blue glass bead. So both strands through there. Ooh, I seem to have a frayed end, which is no problem. We can just trim that off. So cut a nice sharp diagonal when trimming, and then I'm going to take those through. That's it, much easier. I actually want these to sit quite loosely so they can move around as well. So I've got them in the positions I want, and then I'm just going to do another knot with all strands together here. And then they'll move around and create a nice effect on that section. Just tighten each strand for that knot. Okay, and then we move on to the next part. So I'm going to attempt to get all 6 strands through this spacer bead, and also the jump ring for the butterfly charm that we created onto the eye pin. So all 6 strands, and we're going to get them through that bead. Okay, and then the jump ring as well. I'm going to follow that with another spacer. And take them all the way back down to that knot that we put on. So it's going to sit like so. And then another knot. As I say, this can be totally to your own design. You don't have to follow this knot for knot and bead for bead. We're just creating an interesting effect with various plaits and different sort of styles of threading throughout. So I'm just pulling the cords again to tighten that knot. Now I fancy doing a small plait on that one, and I'm going to take some separate strands away for some beads to go on. So I'm going to thread my next selection of beads that I want. I'm going to tie a little knot here on this one. Oops. Pop those back. And then I'm going to do a small plait with these ones. Take those back together and tie another knot here. So we're just gradually building this up, like so. So just keep going and adding beads, separating the strands, bringing them back together, and just creating an interesting effect throughout the stringing process. So I want this one to stay in position, so I'm going to tie a knot either side. Oops, pulled my knot back out. Oh, this one's being a fiddler. Really is trying to be awkward. It's now wrapping around all the pliers. Right, let's try again. So I want to put my knot here. So that one will stay in place while I move on to my next strands. So you're just going to keep building these up in the way that you want. Okay, so some knotting, separating and threading later. We're coming up towards the end. So I'm just going to finish this final section basically in exactly the same way I've already been doing, so separating the strands off and threading a selection of beads. So I'm going to take 2 strands up through that big glass bead. Oh, a little frayed end, so just chop any frayed bits off with your scissors. I'm going to bring all these strands together now and make a knot. I'll do a little plait section here as well. And then I'm going to do the last bit with all strands and plait them all together again, just like we started. So one last knot above that bead. sure these are all tight. And I think just to make it a bit easier, I'll just bring back my bulldog clip for this bit and place that in so it doesn't slide as I do my knots. Sorry, my plait, not my knots. And about 2 or 3 centimeters of plaiting on this side. Move the board out the way. Oh, unclip it first. Okay, so we've got our last bit of plaiting, and now we're going to take all the strands through the button bead that we're going to use as our fastener. So I'm just going to even all the ends. If you've got any frayed bits, then obviously you might need to cut through them. Take 3 strands through the middle hole, and then I'm going to pull against that in order to get my next 3 through. This is the last one. So if you just pull them down, that creates your hole. That one's going to need a trim. So you're just working all 6 through. It's a bit of a fiddle on that one. Okay, and then a knot to secure that on. Again, just pull each strand to make sure that knot's really nice and tight. And we're at the very last bit now, so we're going to tie a knot on every single 6th strand here. I want that quite close, probably about 3 millimeters from the first larger knot. So that's 1. Yep, and you're just going to keep doing that with all of these. So all the knots done, and then you're going to use your scissors to cut the excess thread off now that we don't need. If you have some nail varnish at home, I'd suggest to put a dab of nail varnish on each knot and then let that dry. And this button end will now go through to create your fastener and finish off the necklace. And then that is your Maypole Dance necklace finished. Beautiful.